Hello, everybody. Welcome into debate night. We are back. It is now post World Championship, so we've got a lot to discuss this episode. Some crazy things that went down at Worlds. Should be pretty exciting stuff. Probably have some hot takes. So looking forward to see what everybody has to say today. Let's introduce our guest, Brodie Smith, back in the booth.
Yeah, wasn't on. Sorry, guys. I was sailing the high seas last week, so wasn't on last week. But let's just not forget that Calvin won a major.
It's good. That's very good of you. Yeah, you could be his biggest spokesperson. It's really funny because I half was joking about it, haha, it's gonna get buried. But then it is so funny. 2 weeks later, it really the power of your social media timeline. It's
It
everything
wasn't even
is so
2 weeks.
recency.
The day
Yeah.
after, everyone was posting about
Right.
Worlds.
Yeah, so pretty funny.
Yeah.
But hey, it's on the stat line. It's there.
It's there.
Hannah is here. She has the burden of defending her entire division tonight.
Yeah, I'm so glad that I got up early for FPO and MPO this past week because there was a lot that happened and it was so exciting to watch.
Yeah, honestly, I wasn't going to get up. My daughter took a stand for FPO and decided to wake up in the middle of the night. So I got on the stream. I was like, all right, this is my time, and saw some exciting things for sure. Moses is joining us as well today.
Yeah, happy to be back. Excited to talk a little bit about Worlds, and yeah, that's about it.
All righty, and then Gary rounding out the cast today.
Yeah, I mean, Dustin was supposed to be here, but he talked so fast after the last episode that he blipped out of existence. So I'm here instead.
Oh, Dustin. No, he definitely has a lot of takes to deliver, I'm sure. We must need to have an extra guest today. He was throwing a ton of stuff into the Discord, which I always like to read through. I appreciate Gary or Dustin populating our Discord chat. I actually mean that. It's good to have some people in there talking. All right. So let's get into it. Let's start talking Worlds here. And we'll start with Gannon Buhr. So with Gannon Buhr being the youngest player to win a world title since Nate Doss, is it fair to say he's ahead of pace, on pace, or behind pace to be the greatest player of all time? Did this world title actually do much to change your opinion of his legacy so far, or is it a formality that was just kind of checked off the list? How much do you weigh it, him getting this title so early in his career when it was something that was really next in line for him to do? Brodie.
So I think before you can answer this question, you actually have to define what your greatest of all time is. I think everyone with the GOAT debate, they have different definitions and they value things differently than others. So to me, when I look at greatest of all time, and maybe it's a little bit different from sport to sport, from when it comes to disc golf, just because I think the skill level has changed drastically over the last couple decades. I look at it as who's the best player. It doesn't matter how long they've been around. It's just who is the most skillful disc golfer we've ever seen. And that is Gannon Buhr. And I think at this point in time, it's not really close. I mean, you're looking at, first off, he mentioned that he, at the beginning of the tournament, the press conference, he basically says, if I win this one, I really like my chances to get the next two. I would love to ask Gannon, what tournament he doesn't feel good at. What tournament is there out there that he's going into being I don't feel like I can win this one? Because at this point in time, it seems like he's the favorite at every single tournament. Now, there are those people that are going to, view the GOAT as the longevity, who's been really good for a really long time. And that's where you can put in Ken Climo, Paul Macbeth, Ricky Wysocki, those players. But I think right now, looking at it, this was his biggest win on the biggest stage, going against the biggest disc golf athlete in their hometown. There was a lot riding on this tournament, and he didn't even have his A game. That's the craziest thing. He didn't even play to this top level, and he was still able to pull it off. I think that's super impressive. And to me right now, he's definitely the greatest to ever throw this.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that look kind of in that, just looking at skill and just who's had the most success throwing the disc, it is easy to kind of jump to the conclusion there that it very well could just be Gannon Buhr. Hannah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'd say he's definitely on pace to possibly being the greatest of all time. For me personally, I'd love to see him get a few more major or world titles to truly cement that title. But the reality is that the majors, the worlds, they're the premier events of our sport. Tom Brady is considered the greatest of all time because of his wins in the Super Bowl. Michael Jordan considered the greatest because of his success in the NBA Finals. So to win on just the standard Pro Tour event is like winning in the regular season. Other majors might be like the playoffs, but Worlds, that's the championship. That's the one that a lot of people, fans and players alike, put a lot of value and stock in. And that's where we see a lot of the major excitement too. So if Ken Climo had won, let's say, 12 European Opens, he'd be remembered completely differently. And I know he didn't have 12 European Opens to play, but the point stands. Like Worlds is just a different thing. So I think Gannon winning his first Worlds here and at such a young age and in such a premier level of his game was huge for not just his legacy, but for the sport as a whole. And I fully believe we'll see him continue to have success in the coming years. He'll probably win a lot more majors and at least one, maybe two, three more worlds, depending on how long he plays. And that's just going to go a long way to cementing his legacy as the GOAT. So I'd say he's on pace, but he'll get there within the next couple years.
Yeah, that world title certainly does carry weight, and it can be very subjective depending on who you ask on just where they weigh it with the other majors. Moses, how do you look at this argument?
Yeah, I think, to differentiate between the greatest of all time in terms of skill level at this exact moment and skill level overall, or like career wise, Gannon is probably the best player that I've ever seen throw the disc. Like his putting, throwing, everything else. Like right now, I think he is probably the best I've ever seen. But like career wise, clearly, he's not going to have the greatest career of all time, but he's on that pathway, and I think to compare him right now, all we can do is look at both Paul and Ken and their careers, because those are the two undisputed goats of disc golf, right? They're 22 years old when they won their first disc golf world championship. Gannon is 20 years old. So clearly he's ahead of that timeline a little bit. He's already a 3-time major winner. You have to give him props for that. And we're going to look at his performance over time, but as of now, he is the best player in the world. And that's just undisputed. I wish I could say AB is up there too, but Gannon is just an objectively better player and has shown that for the years that he has been in the sport. And it doesn't really change my thoughts on Gannon as a player. We all expected him to win a world championship at one point in time. And to me, it was kind of just a formality. Like it was a matter of when he was going to win, not necessarily if he was. But if it did change my outlook on him as a player, he's won this Worlds. We can't just say, oh, he's 0-time Gannon Burr, which was a funny joke, right? But at the same time, what now? If you had that opinion, he's won it. And I do think his point about winning the next 2 world titles, like, yeah, he has a fantastic opportunity to do so. And he probably will, at least compete for those, if not pick up a couple.
Yeah, I think it definitely, because he checked it off of the list so soon as he's kind of realized his potential, it really erases a narrative that would have started pretty soon, which is when is he going to get the Worlds? But now that he did win it, it's like, yeah, that was a formality. Yeah. We expected that to happen.
Which is crazy for a 20-year-old.
Yeah. Well, when you get started at 17,
he's going to win Worlds. He's 20 years old. Like that's, I mean, clearly his narrative has been built up because of how great he is as a player, but overall, when you look at it, it's crazy.
And also cashing in that first U.S. title a couple years ago. So it's like he kind of started the majors, early on, which is, just insane to think about. Gary, what do you think about Gannon in that conversation?
Yeah, Gannon wasn't even 3 months old when Doss won his first world title. And shout out to Sam Ferentz, who was the youngest player to ever do it at 16 in 1984. But I think we have to look at the body of work compared to the other person that most people would argue is like the GOAT of the day. And that's Paul McBeth. When Paul won his first Worlds back in 2012, he had a pretty decent body of work ahead of him already, which was 21% podium rate, 58% top tens, and 93% cash rate. When Gannon won his first major in 2022, he was a 16% podium rate, 55% top tens, and 97% cash rate. So I'd say arguably a similar trajectory to get started. But Gannon has 2 years on Paul's first major win, and not arguably at all in a more competitive field. It is a lot more competitive now than it was back then. And if you measure this in times and events only, I would say that he's absolutely ahead of the pace if you're using that as your measuring stick. However, if you're looking at the growth of the game, how much people still love McBeth and his history, you could argue that he's on pace. However, in his eyes, he's already on the future. Like Brodie said in that interview, he said he's going to win the next two because he's been victorious at D-Glow before. And Oregon pretty much belongs to him at this current point. In terms of raw skill, he's already the best player to have ever played this game. And for me personally, this Worlds feels a lot like a box that just has to be checked to get it off the board. For the community, this was a must get, I think, for Burr to win, to continue his hero story so that in 40 years, we can all tell our grandkids about the last time the Ice Age came to town.
I make a correction.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people out there that would say LeBron James is better than Michael Jordan.
They'd be wrong.
That's fine. I'm just saying that it's not unanimous. Michael Jordan's the GOAT in basketball.
Fair, but people would also probably say Patrick Mahomes was better than Tom Brady, and that's also wrong. So sorry.
Maybe Chiefs fans. I don't think a lot of people outside of Chiefs Kingdom is saying Patrick Mahomes is better than Tom Brady.
Not at this moment, I would say. The thing is, the difficult thing is we talk about the pace that he's on and, being 20 years old. The hard part is, let's remember what happened when Paul won his first world title. He won 4 in a row. What did Ken do? He won like 8 or 9 in a row. So that's the difficult thing is we could talk about the pace right now and it looks awesome, but ask us.
Fair. I had to scroll pretty far down the leaderboard. Like I started from the bottom. I just went to the first one that Paul won because I was curious. I started from the bottom of the leaderboard and started scrolling up. It wasn't until I don't know what James Conrad was back in 2012, but he finished like 40th or something. That was like the first name that I somewhat recognized.
Oh yeah, well that's the second part of the argument. Like I mentioned,
it's like 15 people you're trying to beat.
Yeah, it's like any sports GOAT argument. As the dramatic shifting of strength of field, happens, are those accolades even reasonable? Now I would say like Paul's accolades, while you could argue they were easier to obtain, they're not ridiculous to think about. If Gannon Buhr's already won a world title now and he could win one every 3 years for the duration of his career, he could get, close to those kind of numbers. But like Climo's numbers, it's hard to imagine anybody, nobody's doing that. Nobody's doing that. And who knows, like maybe somebody will come across that will just dominate the field, but it's hard to picture, at least where we're at right now, that somebody would win 12 world titles again in a career.
Just look on the FPO side. There was someone that no one had any idea who existed, and they were winning the turn. So it's like think like 5 years from now, there isn't going to be a new batch of people pushing Gannon. I'm not saying Gannon's just going to fall off a cliff, but to think that there's not new people coming in is crazy.
You take a modern day Gannon and you drop him in any era beforehand, and I don't think there's any question the dominance that he'd be able to have.
Right. Probably winning everything.
That's just the evolution of the GOAT argument. It's going to change, as things move on. When you talk about the LeBron Michael Jordan argument, it's a similar thing where it's like, okay, what strength of field there was, super teams, this, that, like so many things get thrown in. And then if you throw in accolades, well, look at these other players that had all these rings. And it's a very confusing thing. But if you look at it, I think if you decide to just look at it and say, well, who do I think was just the best at playing their sport? Then you can kind of make your own stab at that and you throw everything else at the window and it's just an eyeball test. I think if you look at the eyeball test, Gannon Buhr, he might just be the best.
That is the problem with disc golf though, is like it's you're not competing against another person. So there isn't, you can simply just look at someone and be like, they're better at putting than anyone else was.
Right.
They're better.
There's nobody playing defense on
them. Correct. You can't say, well, he was playing against a bunch of plumbers.
Same basket.
So he could do whatever they want.
Now, the courses have changed a lot. So you can throw that into the mix. But yes, as far as putting.
Which I would argue that you have to actually be a more complete player now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And back in the day, you could just have one really good skill set. And that's what every course was designed for. So you're fine. Where now, I don't know if we're going to talk. We might not talk. We'll talk about some. We've seen where it's like, bro, if you had a forehand, you would be so much better at disc golf.
Yeah.
Numerous times.
All right. Well, let's move on to FPO. So the FPO, obviously, quite a bit of fiascos that went on during Worlds for the FPO division. We had a notable DNF from Kristen. We had a lot of players squandering chances. A 15-year-old almost taking down the world title that most people hadn't even heard of. It was truly like, I feel like FPO this season has been somewhat normal other than Kristen's woes. Like everything else has been kind of like not crazy, and then this just went unhinged. They had really saved up all their craziness for one event, and it was quite a watch. So what I want to know is, so many FPO players did toss away their chance to win Worlds. There was quite a few that had a chance to win this tournament even late down the stretch, but I want to know which singular moment stood out to you most. Which player that didn't win had what you think that was the easiest path in front of them to at least make the playoff and give themselves a chance there alongside Ida and Own. Hannah, what do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, I was debating between a lot of people, and truthfully, there's names that I wish were in this conversation that were just so far down the leaderboard that they just weren't. But if I had to pick a player that I feel like lost it just on a single moment, I'm going to pick Henna. And it's not because of her missed putt from just outside the bullseye on hole 17. And it's also not because of her layup shot that went OB on 18. I'm picking her because of her trying to go for the green on 15 to get the eagle when she did not need to. At that point, she had a 3-stroke lead over the field, and there was zero pressure on her at all to go for the eagle. And in the previous rounds, on rounds 1 and round 4, she tried to go for the green, and it just didn't work out. She did get the birdie in round 4, but that was after it hit a tree, and after hitting a tree and turning over her drive, which kept her in bounds because she was about to go OB. So all she had to do in the final round was just lay up twice and get the birdie on 15, and she would have been right up there with Own and Ida. It would have secured her in the playoff, if not given her a better chance at the win if she could make a putt, perhaps. But this stands out to me as far worse than what Ella or Ida did, because Henna had zero pressure on her. It was not like the final stretch. It was hole 15. She had a lead, and she knew that it didn't work in previous rounds, but she still went with that game plan anyway. And even if her drive did make the green in that instance, she would have had to park the hole to get the eagle, making the layup just make that much more sense.
Yeah, no, that's a good pull. I think a lot of people, look at the mistake on 17 and the things that happened later down the stretch. But I think Henna was just a classic case of just trying to overcompensate and do everything she could throwing the disc to not even have to factor in the putting. And that definitely was a course management mistake that cost her. Moses, what moment stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people had a lot of things to say about Ida. Obviously, it was a strange situation in the playoff with, her kind of, not running a putt that was possibly for the World Championships. But she's a 15-year-old. I like to think that she's going to have her opportunity to come back and, be on the same stage. What I can't excuse is the putting of both Evelina and Henna. I feel like I'm like in the meme where it's like the fell for it award. I keep falling for it. And I mean, first of all, like Evelina, like she's the reigning world champion. You're going to have somewhat expectations for her. She finished 12 strokes off. Okay. Not like anything egregious. She probably should have been a little closer, but she was 49% from C1 and her average for the season is 60%. So she was even below that, and for how well she throws this, it's just so disappointing to see the way that she is on the putting green. And then Henna, who obviously was a little bit more in this tournament towards the end, she's not a world champ. She's not established. She hasn't won a tournament since, I think, 2021. So it's been quite some time, but we still continue to talk about her purely based on her throwing talent. And we collectively just cannot continue to have expectations for her performance. I mean, she finished 1 stroke outside the playoff while putting 2 of 8 from C1 in the final round, including an air ball from a step outside bullseye on 17. That's insane. She lost 10 strokes putting to Own in the final round. It was over 30 strokes for the entire tournament. To me, it's like you got to take some time off and like figure something out, because it's and I want to preface also as a side note, like there's a lot of sexism that comes with this discussion. And for the people that talk about that, like you are nowhere near these athletes. Like they would kill you in disc golf. But also at the same time, like I can acknowledge they should be better putters. And as a professional, like you should putt better.
Yeah.
And like that's just the way it is.
Yeah, it's completely objective, obviously. Like
Yes.
whoever it is, if you're putting poorly, you're putting poorly. I think it is such a crazy anomaly we have in the FPO division where you have these players that are throwing so well and putting themselves out of tournaments. Like you see little cases of it here and there, but like the extreme situations. I mean, 2 for 8 in C1, like just legitimately handing over tournaments, and it's just those huge what ifs, and that's what keeps us like falling back into those. Like, well, maybe they'll figure it out, because you just want to see what would happen, because they'd be incredible players. It's insane to watch. Gary, what stood out to you the most?
It'd be really easy, low-hanging fruit to pick Ida. here because of hole 16 in round 4, the layup on hole 18 in the playoff. But for me, I think Hannah chose the right player but the wrong moment, and that's going to be Hannah's drive on 16 in the final round. Because yes, made a mistake on 15. You can make one mistake, but when you make a second mistake in a row, it's really, really bad. And I understand the argument that she eagled it in round 1 and round 4, and I also understand the argument about not changing your play down the stretch. But at the single moment of her drive, she had a 2-stroke lead on Ella, who had 2 holes to play at the time. Ida, a 2-stroke lead on her, and a 3-stroke lead on Own. She was the only one in the contention who could even eagle that hole, which means that a birdie at worst ties everybody else and leaves her completely in the driver's seat. And so maybe she thought she could seal the deal, but now she went out of bounds and she has a new decision to make. Can she get a 300-foot plus shot to the island for birdie, or should she lay up and save the par? And she made that gamble and she lost that gamble. And so her course management and just overall decision-making lost this one for Henna. So the easiest path to the playoff was Henna. And if you follow her to the very next hole, you can see that because she had that drive in her head from hole 16 and she overcooked that rock 3 and she had to lay up to the edge of the bullseye, which she still missed an 8-foot putt, even though she was 100% in the event. She put herself in a great position and she just wasted the opportunity. And anyone out there saying, but Gary, the pressure, she must have felt, they all felt pressure, right? They all felt pressure. So you can't make those mistakes down the stretch.
Yeah. Quite a few course management errors from her. Brodie, what was your golden moment?
Well, first off, it is a great question because it was chaos down the stretch. And I have a lot to say on this one, so we'll see where this ends. I think my honorary mention has to go to Holland Hanley here, just because didn't even put herself really in contention. She's been the most consistent player all year. And I think if she just played decent, I think she walks away with this championship the way it went down, just because everyone was kind of falling apart at the end. And I got to disagree a little bit with Gary because I thought he was going to pick the low hanging fruit, which is Ida on hole 16 during round 4. You have a double-digit lead. And here's the thing is everyone's going to say, 15 years old, whatever, dad's on the bad, whatever. You have a double-digit lead. You are in a league that has proven over and over again that players down the stretch give away championships rather than going and getting it. What we saw Ella do in the final round, that's something that we very rarely ever see in FPO where someone's going after and trying to take it. You have a double-digit lead. When you're in that situation, you have to try to just not park the basket. Just get the disc however you can on the island. She makes the mistake off the tee, whatever, goes OB, throws a great third shot to put herself in a great position. If you don't like where you are, guess what? Jump putt to have 130 feet. It's okay. Because again, you have a double-digit lead. If you go into the final round up 7, 8, 9, whatever it is, you are going to be a world champion. It is going to be what it is. And she ended up losing 9 strokes to Own. 9 strokes on one hole. You can lose 5. You can lose 4. You can do whatever you want. But just watching her, and the other thing I didn't like about it, and again, she's going to learn it is what it is. She never just walked away. Like if you're the caddy there, her dad, and again, I'm not going to tell her dad how she should parent her child. But in that situation, you're not a parent. You're a caddy. You got to get the person to walk away and be like, laugh it off. This is 150 feet. This is an easy shot. Laugh it off. You do this in your sleep. Just go up there and throw it 15, 20 feet left of the basket and move on. I think that's what needed to happen to just like relieve the stress, because you could just see it compounding. And if she gets on the island and takes a 9 or whatever, she wins the tournament.
Yeah. I mean, I think players, like when they get caught on, I mean, we've seen it happen on that hole so many times. I think they just go into shock. Like I think they legitimately get frozen and
you gotta do like the worm. You gotta do something weird.
Yeah, you do. You gotta
backflip.
You gotta take a lap, like reset yourself, because you get just like locked in.
Yep.
And then you keep throwing the same shot. Like mistakes tend to add up, and that was tough. I mean, for me, my moment was honestly like I still think, obviously this is within the playoff, but I mean, not getting up and down from 80 feet. And then not to mention that, but going out of bounds, the only place you can't go out of bounds, and then compiling that by laying up a putt.
But all that doesn't exist if she
You're
just
right.
if she
Probably
just throws it
doesn't.
on the island and not those 7 OB shots.
Yeah,
And
probably
Gary, my
doesn't.
only point with you is Henna. The reason I didn't pick Henna is in the spot at that point in time where she does not think she can make a 10-foot putt.
Yeah.
And so in her head, she is thinking, I got to get this thing on the basket every hole because I need as many strokes as I possibly can because I don't even know if I can lay up this thing. And so I don't know. I think
I would argue though that if she thinks she has to get it on the basket, we saw for the Eagle in round 1 and 4, she had to. I mean, she barely missed the bails to get in. Getting it on the basket would have been a lot easier. From
it wasn't a good
position.
decision for sure. I agree. It was a bad decision.
Definitely some sicko stuff, but like it is a bummer. We didn't get it last year because Evelina was able to lay up for her world title. But like, imagine if like Owen's putt, like Owen Scoggins is never missing that putt. But imagine if that's Henna and she has to make that like a tap in to win worlds. Like,
she's missing that putt.
It's a nightmare. Like it's an absolute nightmare. And like the sicko in me is like, I want that set up because even if she makes it, it's electric because it's like, oh my gosh, like she clutched up.
Also, to Moses' point, real quick, just in case people don't listen to Tour Life, I ended up having Kelsey. She was in a robe, so she's not warmed up or anything. I walked her outside on the porch. I handed her 10 discs. I stepped off 4 steps, which is about 12 feet, 13 feet, just outside of the bullseye, whatever you want to call it. She doesn't play disc golf, guys, and she went 10 of 10. They weren't pretty. They didn't look good. There wasn't a lot of spin on them, but she made 10 putts out of 10 from 12 feet in a robe. Just when I said, get out here and let me see you do this. Mm-hmm. Now, was there pressure? No. Was there 10,000 people watching? No. Was all those things add to it? Sure. But I think what Moses' point is when you look at that skill, it is not a hard skill level to have. And even when the thing is like if Gannon Burr was there or whoever, pick anyone, Owen Scoggins, you could add 100, 1 million people. It's such an easy skill that the more people you add doesn't change. At a certain point, sure, it starts getting a little nervy and now whatever. But from that distance, it shouldn't matter how many people there are.
Hard to miss from 8 feet.
I think it's
harder to miss than it is to make.
I think in disc golf, it's like 18 feet. 18 to 20 feet is where it starts getting really nervy because now you're like, I have to make this putt, but it's that distance of where I could miss it. 12 feet is not that distance.
No, 12 feet, you're basically handing it to the basket. And
you're also, it's not even 12 feet. It's literally like probably, 9 feet by the time it comes out of your hand?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like by the time you throw the putt, it's not going very far to get to the basket. But we also did see Henna throw a putt that went, or a throw or whatever it was that went, a foot.
Yeah. Kelsey's also perfected that too. It's impressive.
Brodie, to your point, I kind of think of it as like almost like a free throw in basketball, where it's something that a player has practiced so much that no matter the circumstances, that Steph Curry, for example, is still going to be 90, 95% from the free throw line, where it's like you rely on your skill in those moments. And like, I mean, I struggle to say Henna doesn't have the skill to make, 12 footers, but like she's so in her mind about it that it's just insane. I mean, like I like to think about, Trevor, what you were referencing, where she's like throwing an upshot or a jump putt or whatever it is, and to have the disc like fall out of her hands. I mean, it's like mentally crazy. That has to be so demoralizing.
Yeah, we were trying to come up with a comparison in our Tour Life text chat of like what would this be in other sports, and someone did say like an air ball at the free throw line, which it's like a free throw is still kind of difficult to make, and
it's not an air ball at the free throw line. It's if you try to shoot the free throw and the ball falls out of your hand.
Yeah.
No,
like, I think the only thing you can say.
I'm not going to say who said it, but I think they said it perfectly. It'd be like Michael Phelps jumping into a pool and drowning. That is essentially what it is. Of where it's like you cannot fathom that ever happening, and in disc golf, you just are never fathoming someone airballing from that close. Like you're more likely to have someone put a blindfold on you and spin around 3 times and hit the basket than you are not to from that close. Like it's just it's one of those things of where I don't know what needs to happen or what needs to change, but it's Yeah, I don't know. It's tough to watch. I'll say that much.
I wonder if
It's not
it's
enjoyable to watch.
I wonder if
My
it's like
last comment.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
You got
No,
it.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Moses.
My last comment is, Brodie, you're trying to get a comparison. This is not a real life thing, but it's like if you ever did Wii bowling and you swung it back too far and the ball like dropped out of your crazy. It's kind of like that. It's like where it just doesn't make sense how it happens.
That's so accurate.
I almost wonder if there's like an over reliance or over thought process on the mechanics of the putt sometimes, and that's what causes it. Like you miss a few and they start to think about every single motion
instead of just like toss it into the basket.
Yeah,
you got to stop
like
thinking about. I think they're trying to fix it through over mechanically analyzing the putt when it's like just toss that thing in the basket. That's what. If I were coaching your putting right now, I'd be like, step up that thing and lob it at the basket, and who cares what happens? Like just toss it towards the basket.
Spoiler, I am actually practicing putting now, so watch out. But last night during my session, I was like, you know what? Let me just like start practicing. Like, let me putt over a limb. Like, visualize like a limb's in the way, so I can't just do like a Gannon-Burr bullet putt. And I started literally just like tossing these like Greg Barsby putts from like 25 feet, 30 feet away from the basket, just up and like dropping them in. And it's like, I think that's what they need to do. If you're bad at putting, you just got to get really comfortable with the idea of like, hey, it's not that hard to just throw this thing into this massive target, and just get comfortable doing it a whole bunch of ways. So that way, when you get up there, it's just, I don't know, hand-eye coordination of just tossing the thing in the basket.
I want to see Henna post like because like it could be this type of thing where if she practice putts, she makes like every single one. Like I want to see her post on Instagram, like her draining like 125 footers in a row.
That would be worse. It would be objectively worse.
But that's like, I'm curious to know how good of a because like we all know putting isn't difficult. So how good of a putter is an Evelina? I get the sense that Evelina might actually be pretty good with no pressure. If you just put her in a room, nobody's there, she's not even filming it. Like, is she going to make every single 20-footer? I bet she does. Henna, I'm not so sure. Evelina, like there's enough there.
If Evelina is still grip or still power gripping her putts, I'm gonna go on the side that she's not gonna make every single one, mechanical wise. But yeah, I mean, there's something mental going on because, like I said, it's not a difficult skill. So there's something's not firing and clicking, and it's. I mean,
I think it's too many things. Too many things are firing and clicking. I mean, you look at the way she gets her practice, or it's like her stance. Like she starts jabbing at the basket.
She might need to be a headphone person.
Yeah.
Try the AirPods.
Could be it.
I think putting, for how basic and easy as it is, if you notice people are having a hard time with their mental game, putting's the first thing that goes because you start overthinking it. But like you guys pointed out, a lot of people have way too complicated like putting stances and forms. Like it really can just be a basic throw it in the basket. It doesn't have to be this complicated, heavy thing. And it shouldn't be.
Yeah,
it's true. Well, we shall see what happens moving forward. Probably more of the same, but you never know. Let's move on here. So I want to talk about the event as a whole here, specifically the purse. So the pro purse was noticeably smaller this year. Entire purse was down quite a bit. I think nearly six figures. The winning players took home $10,000 less this year compared to the last two World Championships. Shout out Isaac Robinson. He got in on that money. So I just want to know, what do you make of that? Do you think the missing funds can simply be explained away by the infrastructure of the venue? How do you kind of look at this? Do you think that it actually relates to the economic state of disc golf in any way? Or is there more to this? Because obviously we just kind of have to take guesses at it. There's not really been a statement on this. Moses, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I would love to play conspiracy theorist, this is not Drew Gibson's comment section. I mean, we had this great world championship. Everyone agrees, like, it's fantastic. The amenities are amazing. We think that just comes from nowhere. I think for a second, use some critical thinking. UC is the man behind this project and has been for many years. And in an interview not even 5 months ago, he talked about how he would rather have less payouts, but more amenities to make the best event possible. And right there, that's your answer. That's clearly what the situation is here. And he had a clear objective with this tournament, attract as many people as possible, as many spectators, the media platforms. I think it was on Finnish TV, and just eyes in general on the sport. all with this idea of growing the sport in totality. He broke attendance records on the grounds, and spectator experience, from what I've heard, wasn't in Europe, was absolutely amazing. And clearly that was the priority. And overall, in the short term, it's less money for players. I don't think Gannon really cares much about $10,000. I'm pretty sure he's just happy he won the World Championships. But it's in the hope of long-term gain, the growing of the sport in the future. If a major broadcast deal or even sponsorships come from this, no one is going to throw a fit about the fact that Gannon made $10,000 less at the 2025 World Championships.
Yeah, that's definitely certainly one way to look at it. And if the players aren't complaining, then whatever. Gary, do you think the ends kind of justify the means here?
What I think is what I've been saying for a while now, and that's that we need transparency when it comes to this kind of stuff. Like, we need to know how the funds are being allocated at events like these. And I'm not saying down to the penny in every single bucket, but when you leave this open to imagination, it does leave room for speculation on how or where this money is being spent or taken. And I think, was this from a logistical, on-site, strength of field, yada yada, the best event we've ever seen? A lot of people are saying that it absolutely was, but there are pros saying that the payout was a problem. Luke Humphrey said in an interview, it may be the most professional feeling, it may have the biggest crowds, but the payout is a big deal, and you can't call yourself the biggest and best worlds ever if you're 100,000 short of the last 2 years. And like Moses said, UC did in an interview 5 months ago, in all finish, mind you, that he wanted to spend that money to, create a better product and, essentially put it in a position where in a couple of years, it just wows the spectators and wows advertisers and all that stuff. But personally, I don't think that's good enough. As big as this event is and how much money they're claiming went into it, I agree with Luke. You don't get to call yourself the best ever for fans and players and have less. And I think that they should be able to alter the payout formula for majors. Like, if you don't want to get another $100,000, great. What about $25,000? Like, can we boost the winner prize on top to make this like the World Championships, the biggest, best event ever? I mean, the PDGA breaks its own rules all the time, so why can't they do it here for this? And also, transparency on this creates something that's mappable for future events to budget for similar levels of success. So I think we got to have transparency here, and I think they could have figured it out.
Yeah, I agree. Transparency, I think, is the biggest problem with all of this. Brodie, how do you see it?
Well, when we're talking about payouts and we're talking about the PDGA, the one thing that pops out to me, which I think maybe people have forgotten about, is when the PDGA, this was, I believe, back in 2021 Worlds, before the tournament started, or maybe it was the day before the final round. I think they posted the payout and basically said, this is the biggest payout at Worlds we've ever seen, yada, yada, yada. And the reception to it wasn't, I don't think, what they were looking for. I think a lot of people were still asking questions. And then they just magically had more money to add to the payout the next day. And it was kind of one of those questions of was that, where'd that money come from? Why don't, and they were kind of claiming we're planning on this money coming. It's well, why don't you just wait for all the money to come in to make the announcement? So definitely, anything with the PDGA and money, I think people are going to start asking questions. Now, to Moses' point, though, I think this is where we got to look at the big picture. I think I would have an issue if this Worlds didn't have water for the players during the tournament. If this Worlds didn't have places for spectators to sit, if this Worlds didn't have a good parking situation, whatever. We're not really hearing a lot of bad stuff coming from this World Championship. If anything, we're hearing good stuff come from it. And if this is what needs to be done to make this seem more professional, to get more people to come out, to get more eyeballs and maybe bigger money, I think we all have to be okay with the payouts being smaller now, because what I would argue is in the past, maybe the PDGA was doing the wrong thing and they were putting maybe too much money into the purse and not enough money into the events to make the events actually good for the spectators, which will ultimately down the road bring more money into the purse.
Certainly. Yeah. Spectators are a big part of the equation that just isn't really a part of touring disc golf a ton until they get to Europe. Obviously, this event had a ton of spectators, and that can, the spectators are dollars at the end of the day. So Hannah, do you see this formula kind of working for them, or do you think down the road it could cause some issues if players get unhappy?
Yeah. So, well, at the very end there, Brody took what was like one of my main points after
Get wrecked.
hearing this conversation so far, which is I think the PDJ, they did a disservice by having such big purses the past couple of years. Because yes, the winner in MPO, I think Isaac got 30 grand each year, which is amazing. But how many bathrooms did they have on site? Was there water at all the places? How much fencing was there? What was the spectators' experience? Did they have food trucks? You ask all these questions about was it a good experience for players and fans? And they're just like, but hey, look at the payout. And I think it's also important to note that, like, yeah, like Hunter even brought up on Griplog, all the fencing and all the extra stuff like that they had at in your excuse me, at the Beast for this tournament, that's really expensive. And they had 10,000 people there, and you would barely even be able to tell that they had it so organized that it was just stunning to see all the clean lines and all the fencing, all the stuff. So I believe that's probably where a lot of the extra money went. And I love that they did that. And I think a lot of the players probably feel that way too. I'm sure there's exceptions, obviously, and we'll hear that. But it's also important or interesting to note that the European Open last year at the same venue, the total purse for that was $43,000 less than the 2024 Champions Cup of which is also a major. And I think that's also because of the venue. And in Europe, they have smaller purses, but it's because they put so much into the venue. They put so much into the fan experience, into the players' experience. The players' entry fees are getting them way more over there than it does here in the States. And that means something.
Yeah, I'd be curious to survey the players and just like, I'm sure it's a tight balance for everybody, but obviously, okay, like basically how much do you value your tournament experience, having all these fans, like the professional looking venue, you're going to be treated a certain way, have the best parking, best access to amenities on the course. How much do you value that versus a straight payout? And some players would probably say, I don't care if we play a cow field if there's more money for me to win. And some players, maybe the ones that have better contracts are probably going to be like, sure, yeah, I don't care if it's $5,000 less if we get to play in this awesome, thing. And it's one thing to do it once or twice a year. It's another thing if that was the whole tour. And it's like, it's a different story at that point. So yeah, I don't know where the players would all land on that. Obviously, this one, with Gannon winning, it's somewhat different.
Yeah, just from my standpoint of being on tour a little bit, there's definitely is sometimes some stuff where you're like, do we really need to have a $500,000 snack budget? Right, that the people that are living out of their vans are mostly just going there and grabbing the entire box of Nutri-Game bars and just taking it into their van. Like, do we really need that? Probably not. But do we need like water throughout the course? Of course. Do we need bathrooms? But I think there's definitely levels of things that, obviously, if the purse was 1.8 million to the winner, then sure, you want a $500 extra for like little snacks here and there, whatever. I don't think it really matters. But I think the big issue right now is 30,000, 20,000. That's a huge decrease.
Yeah.
Versus 1.8 million to 1.7. Even though that's still $100,000 decrease, you're still winning 1.7 mil. And so I think that's where down the road you got to look big picture, like Moses was talking about, and saying like putting the money into the infrastructure for the fans is ultimately what's going to grow these tournaments and make people want to come back and watch again.
Well, and you do have to wonder, like, obviously with that additional money, you do drive in more fans because it's a better, and like hope you would think next year, if there was another, if there's a European tournament out there, those fans who showed up and had a great experience, they're going to want to come back. And so, is there a game plan for, okay, now that we've seen the model work and we can bank on this extra revenue that we were able to convert from having spectators? I mean, the difference between a Pro Tour event that might have a couple thousand people running through it in a 3-day event versus a 5-day event with 10,000 people filtering through. I mean, that's so much more revenue, not just in ticket sales, but what's going to happen beyond the doors as long as they're, able to correctly convert on that. And so like that revenue can't be forgotten either, because as much as you spent extra money to accommodate these people, you have so much more money from ticket sales than you would at any other tournament too. So is that getting factored into the budget? Pre-budget, how aggressively are they planning? I mean, they had a sellout pretty early on. So that would be another thing that's interesting to look at.
Are we ever going to know though? There's no transparency.
No, we
here.
won't. We won't. For all we
And
know, every dollar of ticket sales went into their pockets and or it went all back into the next year's event.
Yeah, I don't want to insinuate that, but there were things that went on in this event that money could have been allocated elsewhere. There were things that weren't as successful. Remember the biggest disc golf expo of all time? Certainly wasn't that. Maybe the money spent renting the ice hockey rink could have been put towards the purses.
Yeah, very good point. All right, one last topic here. We're going to talk about the Beast. Obviously, some notable golf played there for this major. Pretty fun finishing stretch. So we're going to do keep one, change one, remove one. So if the Beast were to be sticking around longer, which obviously we know it is not, or maybe it is Gary. Is that a potentially could be?
It could be. It's not. Unconfirmed source, not my news to share, but it could be around for longer than we think.
I feel like that happens every time with this course, though. Like I feel like it was supposed to be torn down years ago. Well, let's just say it is or it isn't. Doesn't really matter for the sake of hypotheticals. If this course were to exist forever and ever, keep one, change one, remove one from this very notable and famous stretch here of 16, 17, and 18. Obviously, you've got the par 4, 16 or 5 for the FPO division with the island that wrecked so many dreams. 17, which got so many rollaways out of bounds, and they kept throwing forehands. And then 18, obviously quite famous as well. Difficult hole, a few difficult shots there, and some course decisions to be made. So we'll start here with Gary. Which one would you keep? Which one would you change? And what change would you do? And then which one would you just get rid of altogether?
I really don't want to remove any of these. I think the last 4 holes in particular at the Beast are the most electric part of the course, and they're the 4 hardest holes in the course. But if I'm being forced to remove one of them, it is going to be hole 17, because statistically it is the easiest and most boring of all of them. And that's because 60% of the field gets the par on this hole, because a lot of them are laying up to the right and then kind of pitching down to the basket because of so many fluky rollaways that happen here. And so I think that's the one I would eliminate if I had to. The one that I'm going to change is hole 18, and it's not changing the basic design of the hole. I think it has nearly perfect scoring separation on it. I'm changing the green. I'm going to remove the trees that are on the backside of the green, because they create 2 problems in my mind. The first is that they catch errant shots and errant putts, keeping them in bounds. Like, if we want this to be a hard green, let's just make it a hard green. Plus, if we take those trees out, think about how so many more spectators we can get around that green for an even more spectacular finish. So that means I'm keeping hole 16 as it is. Yes, it's divisive. I think on the shot going into the island, fans can surround the players on all sides, and it creates like this stadium effect that I think we don't have in a lot of places in disc golf. And it's also a literal and figurative roadblock for players. You know, if you want to win worlds there, you've got to survive hole 16. AB was the only one in the top 10 to not birdie it in the final round, and he has 2 major memories now of that hole. Henna threw away your chances there. Ida had the field in chokehold until that hole in round 4, and it single-handedly knocked Missy Gannon out of contention on day 1. I think it's a great hole, and it's positioned beautifully on the course. That's what I would do.
Yeah, it's an absolute wrecking ball. There is no doubt about that. Gary or Brodie, how about you? Keep one, change one, remove one.
Well, Gary's going to be sad to hear that the trees on hole 18 actually house federally protected black vultures, so those will not be getting removed anytime soon. I love this question. I think this is a phenomenal question. It's fun to kind of think about it, because this is such a good stretch coming down. Why? Course management. You actually have to make decisions, and what we saw on the FPO side is some really bad decisions. And to be fair, Gannon is the best player in the world. Should he have laid up that putt on 17? Yeah, I think so, because he got really lucky that it did not roll away. We see that happen all the time. He hits the basket, it rolls away. I think you lay up there, but we're seeing decisions on both sides, and I love it. So we're keeping 16. Say what you want. We're keeping 16. I'll die on the hill that that's actually a good hole to all the people that are complaining about it. And I did see some players also being like, you expect us to throw a shot from 150 feet with no layup? Yes, you're a professional disc golfer playing at a world championship. I expect everyone on this podcast to be able to do that. I'm taking out 17. And I'm keeping 18, but I'm adding a forced carry, right? And I'm going to call it the Gannon Burr carry. Right where Gannon Burr laid up to be able to have that little jump putt. I'm making that all OB now, similar to what they did at hole 1 at DMC. that is now all OB. So you can still lay up to the left side of the fairway up there to have a much shorter shot. But now you have to get up and down for par from there. We're not allowing anyone to chip to a world championship anymore. You have to execute at least a decent shot on hole 18.
Well, then they'd have to get a waiver, though. Like, that's just out of the question. So I don't think that's ever going to happen. Hannah, how about you? What are we keeping, changing, removing? Is hole 17 doomed?
Well, yeah, hole 17 is the one I'd remove too. But like Gary and Brodie kind of said, I love the stretch and I think they're all great holes. I'm going to differ from them a little bit though, because for me, my keep would be 18. I think it's an awesome hole in general. I love it as a finishing hole, especially at a major with all the angles and OB and the way they line the fairway, the grandstands, the stage, all of it with fans. It just paints such a beautiful and impressive picture that I love it as an end. So obviously we're removing 17. I like it. It's fine. But it's just of the three, it's just the most boring. There were some notable rollaways, like that Gary kind of pointed out, of OB, or Trevor might have said that, but where people would land and they'd be close to the basket, but because of slope, they just roll OB, and you'd see some comeback putts, some misses. So there was some scoring parity, but it was just not as exciting as the others. The one that I would change is hole 16. Now, hole 16 for FPO was incredible this year. We had eagles, we had 14s, and everything in between. You never really knew how the FPO field was going to score, and that was so exciting to me. But as much as I loved the changes this year to it already, for MPO, it just fell a little flat for me, and maybe I'm in the minority, but it didn't feel as exciting as it did watching FPO. So I propose a change where we add an alternative angle from the tee where people like AB could go for the island in one if they want to. Because how exciting would it be on hole 16 to have moments where AB, like he threw that Hail Mary shot on 18 in the final round to get up there? He's throwing that on 16. Now, if you miss the island there, you just have to re-tee towards the main fairway. But I think it would add a lot of excitement and spice to the MPO field on that hole. And it would work well with what they already have implemented change-wise.
It would be interesting if they were able to position the island in a spot where, like, yeah, it makes it a drivable par 4, but the only way to drive the par 4 is to go like a pretty psycho shot over all the OB, and then playing it the other way, you kind of end up playing it the same way as you do right now. The problem is that green is so small, you'd have to make the distance like somewhat achievable, or nobody's going for it. I mean, it would be fun to see the desperation attempts in the final round, though. That would be fun. Moses, all right, round it out for us. Keep one, change one, remove one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that there's been too much said that I'm not going to, reiterate kind of, but I would keep hole 18. I think it's one of the greatest finishing holes in disc golf. It allows for spectators to, surround the finishing hole. I had a great distribution, as Gary said. It's a good distribution of birdies, pars, and bogeys all across the field. Third most difficult hole in the course. And we saw, that kind of play out on FPO. Obviously, there were some fireworks. And then Nicholas, even, I mean, I don't know if you guys saw it. I mean, he, on his upshot, hit the stage, rolls back, runs a putt. And if he takes a birdie on that hole, he ends up tying Wigan and finish with, putting a little bit more pressure on him. What I will say is for 16, that is the hole I'm going to change. But just in a little bit different of a way, I would push the tee back a little bit for MPO. Gary, you said it, 9 out of the top 10 players took birdies on that hole, showing me it's just a little bit too easy for MPO. Obviously, you're always going to have those big scores because of players running into nerves, but I think just making it a little bit more difficult, and then possibly even forcing players to lay up a little bit to like the, that 130 or 150 foot zone instead of going for the shot, kind of forcing them to make a decision and think a little bit more on the tee. And then I would remove 17 just because, as already been said, it's just a big par fest to some extent, 60% pars on the weekend. The lead card, was it 3 out of the 4 players took par. Gannon was the only one that didn't, and he threw a safe shot. I mean, he threw a forehand, just too much angle, got up and rolled. So for me, I think 17 is just kind of a filler hole in between there. If a player down the stretch really needs the birdie, obviously they're going to go for it. But otherwise, definitely the most underwhelming hole on the course, or the stretch right there.
Yeah, 17 is an interesting one because I tend to like 17, but I think the biggest issue with it is the forehand is so lucky. It's obviously the easier throw if you have the forehand because you're crashing in and not skipping down the hill. I think the hole would actually play best if there was a Mando and you had to throw backhand because the backhand
That's a drop
isn't
zone.
the backhand isn't fluky in the sense that you just have to get the angle control right, and it's just really hard to get that angle right. I mean, it's very hard to get it all the way down there, land it flat enough that you don't skip down the hill, and the results are relatively consistent on that shot. It's just a hard shot, and I think it's exciting. If you got two players coming down the stretch, it's a very hard shot for them to execute under the pressure. We saw it when Eagle and Paul were dueling a few years back at the European Open. The forehand, it's just, I mean, it's one thing in the final round when everybody's just rolling out of bounds and we're getting the tap in pars, which is pretty boring. But
I think they could do a drop zone on that hole.
Yeah, you definitely could.
From like 200 feet, because then it is a question of like, do I want to roll the dice with this forehand and have to go to a drop zone to where I'm pretty much guaranteeing. The reason why everyone throws forehand when they can is because they know if it does roll, it's going to be an easy par.
Step out par,
It's the most rewarding birdie of the four. I mean, 15 through 18 is a really solid stretch there. 17 good. Is the least birdied of all four of them at only 17%. So if you get it, it's fantastic. But yeah, I would love a drop zone at like that 200 mark just to see people have to throw with touch into that green.
Yeah. But just the problem with yours is there's a fence, unfortunately, right behind that tee. But I agree with you that shot should be moved back a little bit.
Yeah, another tee shot would be
if it could. Right the other option, which would be kind of interesting, would be like mess around with the Mandos with the tree, force people to have to go inside and then hyzer some other times, or get real freaky and build like a 30-40 foot platform and have players way up when it's windy and having to throw super high down. That could be devastating.
Also, apologies for the birds on 18, but those trees are coming down.
All right, tiebreaker, Brodie and Moses. Who can tell me?
I'll let Moses go.
Oh, you're conceding.
Yeah, because I don't think I'm going to be good at this question because I haven't really watched that many other world championships. Like, what the heck do I know?
Brother. Okay.
All right. Well, concession taken. Moses, Gary, we're asking you, what is your Mount Rushmore of world championships? That's right. I'm a sucker for the Mount Rushmores. And this is obviously, the events as a whole. So you'd be naming off the years, and it could be based on either division, really, or both. Legendary performances, drama, narratives, anything that really stood out to you. As I was thinking about this, there wasn't four that jumped straight out to me. Obviously, there's one that's going to jump out to everybody for an obvious reason, but curious to see where you guys go with this one. So, Gary, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first.
All right, go for it.
The last time you gave me a Mount Rushmore question, I kind of went off the rails with it. The first one on my personal list is going to be 2021. Duh. Obvious reasons. The holy shot is the most exciting moment I think that we have ever seen in disc golf. Despite how many times they try to play the Philo Albatross, the holy shot's still the most exciting. But we also had James Conrad acing during that event. Which was a lot of fun to watch, that stall putter shot. And you had good controversies during that event as well. But I think that one's also important because of the ripple effect it had on the sport. Because if Conrad, with his win, was that what got MVP enough money to be able to make the play for Simon? Like, was this the single, like MVP looks back, was that the moment that made them, the next big manufacturer? So I think that has a lot of things to talk about. Also, I'm going to say 2015. To me, this is the representation of the pinnacle of the McBeast mode concept. After 3 rounds, Macbeth is 8 strokes back. Then he goes 15 under 2 rounds in a row. And it was at Moraine in PA, which is a course I've played. So, like, to me, I personally understand and feel how difficult that is. And then he just kind of gallops over the finish line in front of everybody. Next one up for me is going to be 2018, because that was the first time I was introduced to the underdog that is Greg Barsby, and probably the deadliest player from inside 120 feet. And just seeing the big step jumpers that he did back then, it was super exciting, especially out there in Vermont. I really, really enjoyed that one. And I'd have to say, last one on the list, I struggled between the one that happened in Peoria because I really liked that event, but I'm going to go with this past weekend just because of what it meant for kind of setting a gold standard for what we want to see from Worlds going forward. I think you have to put it on the list because of the infrastructure, everything about it across the board, and we got some crazy drama on both the MPO and FPO.
Okay, all right. Some picks I didn't necessarily expect. So I think a lot on the board. Moses, what do you have?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to start out with the low hanging fruit, like Gary said. I think 2021, the holy shot. I mean, this is like the first World Championships that I watched live, and I remember watching it on my phone and just like around a bunch of people that don't care about disc golf and just freaking out about disc golf. And they're like, "What could possibly happen?" That you were freaking out about. But it was the holy shot, and I think that's kind of how everyone felt, that it was just the greatest shot in disc golf history, and you couldn't write a better story. And for me, as a Paul fanboy, like it broke my heart to see, but also like it was such a cool moment. And I think what a lot of people forget is that James ended up winning in a playoff. That wasn't for the win. Paul still had the opportunity, and then threw that forehand downhill, rolled OB, and it's just a very memorable Worlds for me. The second one I'm going to talk about is Paul and Goose in 2022 at Emporia. I don't necessarily love the location of Emporia, and I don't think that the players do as well. But as a Paul fanboy, like this is probably my favorite Worlds just because of what it meant for him. The back and forth between Goose and Paul, the 60-foot putt on 17 where he throws his hands up in the air, awesome moment. And then Goose forces a playoff on 18 there, and Paul wins it on hole 16, which is, as far as Emporia goes, probably the most classic hole they have. The island hole, throwing the buzz right there. And to me, like as much as I hate to say it, it's probably going to be Paul's last Worlds. It's kind of my hot take there. I don't think he's probably going to win another. And so that's just a little bit of history for me. And then 2014, I don't know how you don't include this one, the Paul and Ricky playoff, where it's, the height of the Paul and Rick rivalry. It's a 5-hole playoff. They're just draining 30-foot putts back and forth. And then it just ends in Ricky just smacking a forehand into a tree about 20 feet in front of him. You can't ask for much more as a Paul fan. And it was his third title in a row. And then 2018, like Gary said, yeah, Barsby. Yeah, I don't have much of an emotional connection, but in terms of just classic disc golf, this is like really what separates like the COVID boom and pre-era disc golf to me. And so, yeah.
Barsby 2018 for both of y'all?
It was so much fun to watch when he went sport mode and he took the thing out of his hair.
Crazy picks.
What would you put over it?
Well, for starters, and I think I'll end up giving Moses the win because 2014, you can't snub 2014. Yeah. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
I think 22 is a great pull as well, because that was a great one. But Barsby, yeah, I mean, if you want to look back, I mean, there's older World Championships, obviously.
Did anyone pick Ken for one? No Ken Climo? Wow.
No, those are kind of ancient history.
When I was
he had 12 to choose from. I didn't know if one of them was going to make it.
You got Avery Jenkins in a playoff. Another interesting one is, I want to say, I'm trying to remember, there was one year towards the end of Val's career where she beat Paige, who was looking unstoppable, and kind of a shocker. It might have been 2016, which would have put it at the same time as Ricky's first world title. So that's a pretty notable one as well. I think it was 2016. I think it was at Emporia. But yeah, I didn't expect Barsby. But I mean, the fact you guys both had it, I mean, I was just like,
through, and I don't think that there's like, at least FPO, like there was nothing that really stood out to me. Like, I don't feel like the last few World Championships have been too crazy. And then in MPO, I mean, I don't know, like obviously it was great to see Isaac win back to back and everything, but they just weren't like crazy memorable events to me.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Barsby's 2018 performance, like I said, like he just hasn't won anything since then. It was so out of the blue and so random that it just kind of has a lasting impact, I would say.
2018 was the first Worlds that I had really understood everything about professional disc golf at that point. And it was the first time I sat down wire to wire to watch every moment. And so like it has a really special, because up to that point, like I'd watched a casually different place. That's why 2019 was kind of there too, because I really loved the battle, like with Ricky fighting back and Macbeth in the lead there.
2014 was the first live disc golf I ever watched, and that was obviously Terry Miller with a backpack on, whispering as he filmed it.
And I like kind of though. We need more whispering back.
We do.
I like the whisper.
It adds aura. It really does. But yeah, comment down below. I'd be curious to hear everybody else's picks for this, because I do think there's a lot of personal attachment to world titles, because it's not like we have this long list of just like ridiculous world championships when we had the Climo and Macbeth eras of dominant world titles there for a little bit. You don't get as many. And then Paige kind of had her run. Val had a little run there. Kat had some dominant titles. So yeah,
can I make a statement real quick though?
You can.
From a non-disc golfer before 2020. I think going back to like this Worlds and something hopefully we build on is like looking back at this Worlds, you can look at that and be like, wow, that was an impressive event.
Yeah.
Someone that was not a disc golfer, but has been to many sporting events before, when I look at that 2014 Worlds, sure, it might have been a great battle between Ricky and Paul. That looked lame as heck.
Yeah, I mean,
it looked like two guys playing in a park.
Right. I mean,
you know what I'm saying? So it's like
it's a lot different.
The optics, and again, that's not to bash the players. I'm just saying the optics of the event,
right?
Them actually using the drone footage to show a big crowd, and not the Disc Golf Pro Tour using the drone footage to show 40 people watching lead card. The optics matter, and I just think that's like a huge thing. That was what?
30 years
just
from
over
now,
10 years from now.
30 years from now, it'd be a lot harder to look at like a 2014 Worlds and give it much credit, because there will be like, there's a couple, there might be 1,000 people there. But yeah, comment down below. Curious to hear what you guys think. Make sure to submit some more topics. You can scan the QR code here on the screen, and
victory lap for Moses.
Fine, there it is. You can I'll give Moses his flowers, and you can submit topics. We need more topics. We're not getting it. The submissions are slowed down. I'm giving you a call to action. Scan this code. Throw everything at the wall. I want more submissions. Obviously, when we have Worlds going on, I don't really need as much ammunition. But after Worlds, I mean, we got Turku coming up with basically nobody playing it. So we're gonna need some topics for next week. So throw them in there. Moses, congratulations, second dub.
Yes, I think so.
Well done.
Yes,
well done.
We didn't even get to talk about Nate Doss on the mic. I was looking forward to that, getting opinions on that. But I was wanting Philo. I'm a big Philo head on commentary. But yeah, I know. I'll call me old school, I guess. But yeah,
cheese on bread, man.
Cheese on bread.
Well, thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next week.